Couples who have broken up because of a third person that did not involve cheating. What happened? Didn't involve any actual cheating. My boyfriend at the time had to go to another state to have surgery on his spine. I was supposed to come within a couple of months to join him once he was in recovery. In the meantime, I was making some money to help with the move. I called up a friend named Matt to hang out and see if he could help me pick up a little grass to help with my nausea. Total platonic friend. We had been friends for a couple years but didn't hang out often. He came by with his roommate, played some Magic the Gathering with me and my brother, and he then took me to hang out with his other friends for about an hour. We watched some anime. There were a lot of us there. He and I were never alone, even in the car. Smoked a little and I bought a small bag from his friend. It was a nice night. He dropped me off relatively early and life was good. Until his mean, extremely jealous fiance saw our text messages saying that he was coming to pick me up for the night. She was a known vindictive witch who hated me for no discernible reason. Was always super nasty to me, but I hardly ever saw her, so I ignored it. Well, she went behind both of our backs and contacted my boyfriend fresh out of surgery to tell him that I was sleeping with her fiance. My boyfriend called me, yelled at me, told me he didn't believe me after the girl exposed the truth, and ghosted me. I immediately sent her an FB message that essentially said, "I don't even know you. Why would you tell my boyfriend that I'm sleeping with Matt when I wasn't even alone with him?" She responded with, "Oh, I didn't even ask Matt. Glad you didn't do anything." Then I asked her to call my boyfriend back and tell him the truth, but she ignored me and sent me a smiley face before blocking me. I told Matt and he apologized profusely. He was kind of a doormat to her. Sadly, she got to keep her fiancé, who was way too good for her. Matt was a good dude. They got married. Well, I lost a long-term boyfriend that I was very much in love with at the time due to no fault of my own. It worked out in the end since I love my current husband with all my heart, but I'm still mad at that nasty woman for doing that to me. She just wanted to hurt me and I still have no idea why. I think she was one of those girls who thought all skinny girls deserved to be punished because she was obese, like a female with an incel mentality. I say that because the very first thing she ever said to me the day I met her was, "Shut up, skinny woman. Skinny women don't know anything." Also, fun fact, I was only skinny after having lost a large sum of weight, and I had actually been overweight my whole life up until then. Kitty, even if you weren't morbidly obese, you'd still be rotten on the inside. I hope Matt does better someday because he very easily could. If he will believe someone's word over hers with zero corroborating evidence, he's not worth it. Story 2. No cheating, but it really seemed like she was in love with her best friend. She bent over backwards for this woman, constantly. And yet every time she'd talk about her to me, it never seemed to be anything remotely positive. I never could understand why she was persisting with her friendship. Plus, always bad-mouthing whoever her friend was dating. Some may have deserved it, but it started to feel like a pattern. Like she was jealous. I never asked or accused any of this, but 6 months in, it should have been sooner, it was finally crystal clear to me I wasn't going to get anywhere near the level of effort I was giving, or even half of the output she was putting into this girl. Called it off and really felt quite good to end it. Epilogue. About 4 or 5 months ago, 2 years after I ended things and not a word to each other since, I walked into a banh mi shop to place an order. Went to wait outside since it was busy, glanced up and at a table outside, and noticed her friend, then a familiar blonde ponytail with her back to me, not at all interested in any interaction, even accidental. I went back into the shop, picked up my sandwich, walked a different way out of the shop to avoid passing them. Later that night at the pub, I got a private phone call. Ignore. Call again a few minutes later. Ignore. Get a voicemail. It's the friend saying to leave the ex alone or she'd have to go to the police. I was confused, but really couldn't do anything but laugh it off and move on with my day. What in the world, man? What a weird turn of events. Frankly, they deserve each other. Story 3. She was my best friend and worked with my fiance at the time, so she was pretty close to both of us. We were going through a rough patch and I thought I could vent in trust and in confidence to my best friend, but instead she took my words and twisted them, and regurgitated the version of my event to my fiance, in turn making the problems worse and fester, and would do the same thing with his vents to her, giving me the twisted version of what was supposed to be his in confidence vent to a friend. Towards the end, we took a 1 week-long trip of solitude and reflection where we went to camping in the middle of nowhere with no distractions, no technology for a week to talk and discuss our life together. It was during that week of discussing what had been going on recently that it came out that she was giving him a very different version of what I was venting to her about, and vice versa to me, which was causing more problems between us. We chalked it up to her own bad track record of relationships. Misery loves company, after all. During that week, she started a new job at a different company. So I ended up ghosting her and blocking her number, and my fiance didn't have to see her at work anymore, so it was pretty easy and effective to fully cut her out of our lives. I didn't need an explanation on why she was doing what she was doing, and frankly, I didn't owe her any explanation on ending the friendship based on what she was doing. Our relationship still broke down because it was irreparable at that point, but I'd never experienced such underhanded friendship in my whole life as that one. Turns out he was cheating, just not with her. And apparently one of the contentions was that he was upset that she wouldn't sleep with him despite knowing the whole time that he was cheating on me. Story 4. Every guy she has ever dated had cheated on her. Her grandfather cheated on her grandmother, and her father cheated on her mother. This one while we were together. As a result, she was incredibly insecure and made me cut out all my female friends. Started to feel like I was walking on eggshells around any woman, including cashiers at the supermarket, even when I was alone. She got mad about one of my neighbors being friendly to me a couple of times. Not like in a secret side conversation. While my neighbors, a couple, my ex and I were all in a group chat. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. We had a fight about it. I took a week away, talked to friends, family, and my therapist, and realized I'd been developing secondary trauma from it all and ended it. Still loved her, but it was messing me up. I found out through the grapevine that she was eventually diagnosed with PTSD. For all the cheating and a history of mistreatment too. Was getting professional help and she's with a new guy. Hopefully she's doing okay. Story 5. She had a psycho mother who would poke her head into every aspect of her relationship. At one point her mom was going to work and watching me in the security cameras from the time I woke up until I went to work or bed. I only found out later it was so when I left she would bring my girlfriend at the time, ex, over to try and force me out of the situation. She was mistreating, unkempt, unemployed, but easily controlled by her mom to do anything she wanted. He also was or is known for selling her pictures for cash. The tipping point was when her mom forcibly moved back into the house she was no longer paying for, then began stealing groceries, money, and medical camp to take to her other daughter, unemployed high school dropout with 3 kids, called her mom out. She spit on my face and called me selfish. I haven't spoken to that ex since, and looking back, I can't believe I even put myself through it. Her and her family were equally insane. Also found out after everything ended that my ex and her ex, the guy who would sneak over, were responsible for the death of their 1-month child but never charged. The world's kind of messed up sometimes. Story 6. Had a friend who did everything with me. She would constantly go through boyfriends left and right, but I never thought anything of it. It wasn't until I got in a relationship that I realized I was her third person that was ruining all her relationships. She wanted to be with me and kept dating these guys in an attempt to make me jealous. These guys worshipped her, and she just wanted me. I didn't have a clue until she started getting jealous of my girlfriend and trying to break us up. I finally cut her off and she just blatantly accused me of mistreating her, despite the fact that I never had. It was her "if I can't have him, no one will" moment. It took years to recover what was left of my reputation after that. I hate that I was the reason all those other guys got their hearts broken though. After 4 years, my name was semi-cleared. I never had to go to court over it because she wasn't confident enough to go lie in court then. Turns out that she actually got into a serious relationship. When he went to break up with her, she accused him and took him to court over it. He then broke out countless videos of her during arguments saying she would lie about it if he left. He also had compounded evidence of her mistreatments. He came in completely prepared. He knew who she was from day one, and he kept all the receipts. Sadly, even with all that evidence, they still ran the case for a while. And it all came to a head when he and his mother came to get some of his stuff from their apartment. She harmed him all the way out to the door, jumped in her car, and then she hurt him with it. At that point, the judge threw the case out and then he countersued her. It's so sad that it took all of that to happen for him to finally be let off the hook. But at least he got away from her and had his name cleared. We lived in a semi-small town and I was a well-known but behaved party guy. That's how everyone knew me and how she ruined my reputation. I was the party guy who handled his drinks better than most, but also the lame dad at the party. I made sure everyone was safe and everyone behaved. If Ash got too hammered, I made sure she got a room and no guys tried to sneak in there with her. If someone got hurt, I always had my kit with me and would get people back into party condition. If a fight was about to break out, I'd be the lame guy who broke it up and separated the two. She was one who got hurt. We got to talking and it turned out that we had a bunch in common. We instantly became friends. This was 3 years before the whole drama. She watched me meet girls at parties and stuff, but I never had a girlfriend. I guess the label of girlfriend is what took her over the edge. That was when she changed entirely and the animosity between us began. It was always her, not him. Story 7. My boyfriend conspired with her friend to mistreat me. He, boyfriend, spent the night telling me he'd be okay if I slept with friend R because he hadn't had intimacy in a while. He kept going back and forth on it. I was distraught and asked over and over if he was serious. Eventually, boyfriend, had to go home because he had early classes in the morning. We had been out with a friend and another friend, D. I trusted them both, so we continued to hang out. I brought up what boyfriend had said. Both expressed concern and we hung out because I didn't feel like being alone at the time. R stopped and bought a bottle of drinks to share. I wasn't in the mood to drink, so I barely had any. D went home after a while. It was about 4 a.m. at that point. We'd been driving around, so R pulled into his neighborhood and parked at the playground to hang out and talk. Now that we were alone, he told me that boyfriend wanted to sleep with a girlfriend of ours and that boyfriend told him R could have intimacy with me, which obviously made me very upset. I was crying a lot. He kept trying to make me drink, but I refused. He pulled me into his lap to kiss me and I started crying more. I asked him what he was doing. If he knew that he was destroying the relationship between BF, R, and I. He said yeah. I got back into the passenger seat, still crying. My house was miles away. It was very late and now I did not feel safe. He'd exhibited some questionable behavior before, slightly unhinged, but nothing I'd ever been worried about until then. I was shaking and crying and scared as hell. He did what he'd set out to do. The last thing he ever said to me before he took me home was, "You look scared." I reported it a few days later when the shock wore off. He used protection. It was he said, she said. It went nowhere. I dropped out of college. I couldn't go back. So yeah, my boyfriend and our friend conspired to mistreat me and succeeded. Story 8. Do unhealthy non-monogamous situations count? If they do, I've had a couple of non-monogamous relationships go south because of unhealthy dynamics between multiple partners. In one case, a married couple was looking for partners. The wife had been having non-mono relationships for a few years already and was having such a good time of it that she encouraged her husband to do so as well. Initially, he was reluctant, but eventually decided to go for it. If you're thinking that he and I started dating, got along, and suddenly his wife got cold feet and shut everything down, you're right. She was fine opening the relationship as long as she was getting her needs and wants met, but once her husband was interested in another person, she couldn't handle it. She dumped all her partners and turned into Sweet Susie Homemaker, her life all about her devotion to her beloved husband, overnight. He was terribly conflicted about it. I saw where it was going, so I broke it off. My last non-mono relationship was with an old friend. He started dating another woman right about the time he and I started dating. For a while, things were fine, but they were never truly balanced. He prioritized his other girlfriend from the very beginning. After a few years of letting him talk to me into believing that everything was really equal when it absolutely wasn't, I finally realized that she was his girlfriend and I was just his side chick. I promptly kicked him to the curb. That non-monogamous period in my life wasn't good. I don't regret trying it out and seeing what it was like or the lessons learned from it, the biggest of which is that I'm definitely happiest in a monogamous relationship. I'll never have a poly or non-mono relationship again. There's too many variables, too many unhealthy people in the community, and I don't need that in my life. I've definitely known folks who are poly and it works great. That just absolutely isn't me. So, lessons learned. Story 9. My ex-boyfriend and I broke up because of his ex-wife. They were separated, moving towards divorce when he and I met. She ran off with his best friend, so no chance of reconciliation. But over the almost a year and a half that he and I dated, he was never able to set boundaries with her or hold her accountable. She financially ruined him. Opened cards in his name to fund her affair, but he wouldn't report fraud. She stopped paying in her car, which was in his name, and when the license plates and tags showed up in the mail, he just handed them over to her. She took his dogs in the separation, but anytime she wanted to dip out of town, she would leave the dog with him for free pet sitting, regardless of his availability to accommodate. So on and so forth. We fought about it all the time. I was picking up the tab during travel and dining out, and he was letting her walk all over him. But he thought if he played nice, he could protect his pension from her. She only would have been entitled to 50% of 2.5 years of retirement, which is a drop in the bucket over a 30-year career. He did all of this to protect a small fraction of his pension. Now I don't date separated or newly divorced men. Story 10. A bit of a long story. Took place over the course of 5 years, but the short of it is that my dad's girlfriend has broken up my fiance and I up twice. We used to live or work with him on and off while my fiance and I were in school. The first time we broke things off, she had tried to convince my fiance that I was some useless schmuck. I admit I wasn't as attentive as I could have been. I was working 2 jobs, including the one with them, and I was a full-time student, so my priorities weren't quite where they should have been. After breaking things off, my fiance and I talked about what happened and decided we just needed to step back to reflect, but not a full-blown breakup. We did well for a few years, during which my dad's girlfriend convinced my fiance that she was bipolar, possibly schizophrenic. She would go to my fiance's doctor's appointment with her and got her prescribed an ever-changing number of meds. It turns out it's hard to find the right balance of meds when you're treating a problem you don't have. My dad's girlfriend also convinced my fiance she could never be a mother and should get a hysterectomy. Luckily, the doctors refused. When the idea was discussed with me, I was confused because my fiancé always wanted kids, but my dad's girlfriend made it clear I didn't have a say. My fiancé and I often talked about how things weren't right and we needed to change something, but we felt stuck. This all culminated in my fiancé having a mental breakdown, understandably so, and asking to be brought to a mental health facility. Well, there, my dad's girlfriend decided that my fiancé had abandoned us and that I needed to break up with her. Emotions were high and I knew I couldn't let my fiancé come back, but I couldn't think of any other way to get her out. So I reluctantly broke things off. She left. We started talking again a couple weeks later after we both thought about what happened. My fiancé agreed that the only way to get her not to come back was to do what I did. So there's thankfully no hard feelings. I've since left and my fiancé and I are back together and doing well. We haven't talked to my dad and his girlfriend since. Narcissism is a hell of a thing. Story 11. I've been deceived over by friends and partners alike. Cheated on. I've thrown myself into relationships 250% and gotten taken advantage of. I'm a very loving, affectionate, and giving partner. In my most recent relationship, my ex had a good co-parenting relationship with her first kiddo's dad. She'd constantly post about him in socials, sharing memories, and I was okay with it at first, even if it seemed a tad excessive sometimes. We were long distance and spent a lot of time in voice and video chat. Around the holidays, she was visiting family and he showed up and was being flirty with her. And it made me uncomfortable. But I didn't want to spoil her time with her family, so I tried to just push it to the back of my mind. I ended up getting off the phone with her and she, I guess, could tell I was a bit upset or off. She even asked pointedly if her ex was making me uncomfortable. I told her to enjoy her time with her family. It was my own overthinking that was bothering me and we could talk about it later. So she's already got a feeling that he bothered me, and then later proceeded to make a TikTok with her son and him. She was standing very close to him, arm on his shoulder. Then towards the end of the video, she playfully turned towards him and pulled his beanie over his face. It came off as very playfully flirty to me, and only exacerbated my insecurities. She tried to call me on the way home with the kids in the car. The kiddo she has with him is old enough to understand we would have been talking about his dad if I talked about it then, so I requested we wait till she gets home to have a private discussion. And to again not worry about it because it's my own overthinking and insecurities, and I need her to just listen, hear me out, and not personalize it. When we finally got around to talking about it, she did personalize it, took it as an attack. I wasn't accusing her of cheating, I was simply trying to communicate. I felt insecure and what I really needed was for her to just tell me she loves me and empathize with how things made me feel. Offer reassurance, I guess. She instead went into a tirade of what a piece of trash her ex is and how nothing would ever happen again. The next 2 days we didn't talk much. When we resumed communication, she said something to the effect of, "I'm confident if you don't fix your overthinking, insecurities, and negative spirals, I could leave you." This was an extremely low blow. She's got a host of depression, trauma, grief, bad thoughts. All of that stuff I was there for her through. Cried with her in some cases. I tried to support her and lift her up as much as I could. Never once did I say or imply that I'd leave her over her depression or mental issues. And here she is giving me an ultimatum over mine. That I'm in active therapy trying to fix or at least be able to live with it more comfortably. I stewed on this for a few days and eventually couldn't reconcile all the effort I had been going through for her, seeing that she was so ready to discard me, so I broke up with her. I wish her well. I hope she gets better. This was about 3 weeks ago now. I'm still hurting over it and the hurtful things she's done in the aftermath. But the aftermath has also shown me that I was right to leave her. Anyways, on a lighter note, if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 12. She couldn't process her romantic feelings towards her best friend, me, because she was very attached to identity as a straight person and we're both women. She was very conflicted about her attraction to me. Instead of being honest with herself, her boyfriend, or me, she just started acting weird. She would dump her boyfriend and come over to my house. In private, she would rizz me up. She would playfully pin me to the wall and make eyes at me or offer to give me a massage. Stuff that can't really be explained away by girl friendship. The next day, she would freak out and claim it was all joking, then get back with her boyfriend. I understand what to find yourself crushing on a female friend and what it's like to come out while living in a red state. I just told her it's cool, we can just be friends. My heart was crushed, but she was a cool girl and I'd rather be friends than not. The same week she got back together with her boyfriend. A few weeks later, when I'm mentally moving on and chatting up a new person, and she's getting less attention from me, then bam, she dumps him again and calls me up. Repeat. She and I never officially dated. She was technically broken up with him when we hooked up, but all her boyfriends were dumped, taken back, dumped again, and had no idea why. I think we were all in love with her, but she was in love with attention and had us all in rotation. Story 13. My ex was best friends with her ex and talked to him every day. That isn't necessarily a deal breaker by itself, except it got complicated when I found out that he tried to mistreat her while they were dating. She stayed with him for a year after that and they never ended up sleeping together. She finally broke up with him because she felt like he was pressuring her into intimacy, something she was not comfortable with after the incident. She had told him that intimacy was off the table, at least until she could trust him again, and he wasn't okay with that. So they broke up. They continued to talk every day and she still considered him one of her best friends. Fast forward to a few months into a relationship. The ex calls her up in the middle of the night. Turns out he went on a date with some random girl, lost his V-card to that girl, decided intimacy wasn't all it was advertised to be, and called my ex to tell her he would be okay with a relationship with her without intimacy, referring to why they broke up. At this point, he's already well aware that we're dating, and he spends the next month trying to talk to her about their history and past relationship, while I am feeling more and more weird about this whole situation. Finally, I ask her what the deal is with this guy, and she has a complete mental breakdown and cries her eyes out for hours, and tells me the whole story. Maybe some people are okay with their SOs being close friends with their exes, but in this case, I'm uncomfortable with her being friends with her ex who mistreated her. There were other reasons why we broke up, but this was a big one. Story 14. For my personal one, a very clearly unstable woman who had never met before who identified herself as a psychic insisted to my ex that she would go to university, study and succeed in fashion and find the love of her life there, while standing right in front of me, through a mutual friend. About 2 months later, she left me, started attending online culinary and food science courses and started dating another student almost immediately after, moved into his uni dorm, absolutely not allowed by the way, and insisted she was fulfilling what she wanted in life, even though the psychic was already wrong as she did not and still does not study fashion. Fast forward half a year and she has jumped between at least 3 other guys in that time, the first of which she met because of the boyfriend she had following me and attempting to come back to me being another one. Apparently still fully believes in her prophecy and talks to our mutual friends about it. The juicier story, that is not mine, is 2 of my friends were dating for roughly a year. They were regulars at the bar I worked in, and the lady was best friends with my partner at the time, so I always got the gossip. I hired an old friend of mine to my staff, who at first hooked up with a colleague that the girlfriend had previously slept with, and then hooked up with my co-manager. About a month into this, boyfriend breaks up with girlfriend and immediately starts dating my colleague. Colleague quits her job, starts living with him. Colleague and girlfriend start feuding pretty hardcore for a while. This goes on for 2 months. Before colleague breaks up with a boyfriend for reasons still unknown, colleague and girlfriend start hanging out quite a lot. Expected, but nice to see women coming together and making up. And then they start kissing. Colleague and girlfriend are now girlfriend and girlfriend, and have been for over a year. Own a home and 2 dogs together. These were 2 of the most straight women who had always insisted on themselves being straight, and the best relationship they've both ever had is with each other. Story 15. My first real girlfriend had a friend that was always right there to be her shoulder to cry on. I told her numerous times he was into her. It was obvious to literally every one of our mutual friends. Every time we argued, he'd come running. He'd find excuses to talk shit about me, even if the topic of conversation had nothing to do with me. For her birthday, I got her tickets to see her favorite band. When I was getting to know her, she and I randomly said the same obscure band at the same time as being her favorite, so the tickets were really meaningful. He twisted her up about them until she was convinced I only bought the tickets because I liked the band, so my gift to her was basically a gift for myself. The last day we went on, he literally spent the entire time texting her, back when texting actually cost money. Every 10 minutes is like clockwork, as if he was just trying to interrupt as much as he could. We were planning on losing her V-cards that night, and she told him that. We broke up, they got together, no big surprise. Years later, I'm in college, sitting on the couch watching TV, and my phone rings a number I've never seen. Answer it, and it's him. He's hammered. They're at a party with people we were friends with in high school. He's screaming at me to come and fight him. I call my best friend who's at the party and ask if I should come down there to fight him. My friend assures me that not only is it not worth it because I'm twice his size and it wouldn't be a good look to be pounding in such a little guy, but he's also embarrassed a ton out of Steph, her real name, so I'm already coming out a winner by doing nothing. Apparently me laughing at him and hanging up sent him on a tear. The whole party is trying to get him to leave at this point. She called me the next day, sheepishly apologizing. See, when she and I dated, she'd pitch a fit if I even entertained the idea of getting hammered. She hated me fighting even more, so I didn't do it. Now she's dating a dude with clear drinking issues who looks for fights so hard he's calling up people he hasn't seen in years to start them. I coolly brushed off her apology and just said, "That's some cat you got there. Good luck with that." She dumped him that afternoon. I like to think I played a role in their demise. A few months ago, she randomly messaged me at 1 a.m. on Instagram asking if I ever thought about what happened between us. I just told her we weren't right for each other, and Eric helped us figure it out faster than we would have without his help. Then I asked how her husband and kids are. Story 16. I was living with a girlfriend in an unfamiliar city. I'd been through some challenges and kind of just crash landed with her after we'd been doing the distance thing for a while. She and I started to have less fun. She was starting to really get aggravated when I'd talk about going hiking or out for drinks with some people from work. I was finally making friends, but she was tied to her school program and began to really imprint her frustration and envy on me. My girlfriend went on a trip home, 2 weeks without me. I was out rock climbing with friends when one of them, let's call her M, took a fall and hurt herself. We spent the whole night waiting for rescue, and the rescue was chaotic and shambolic. But in the end, they pulled her up the cliff. The rescue team, my friends, and I all took turns carrying the litter out of the woods. A 45-minute technical hike and a good day. It comforted her the whole way out. Spent the next day in the hospital with her while my friends went and got some sleep. We trauma bonded in a big way. When we got back to the city, everything was different. We started spending more time together, and since girlfriend was away, there was nothing to keep us apart. We never physically cheated, but whatever we created was firm. When my girlfriend got back, I knew right away that things were over. I got to work on finding a way out as soon as I could. Em and I never actually did get together, but I learned that people could be genuinely happy for me without needing to be part of the things that made me happy. It was a big learning moment for me. Story 17. My ex had a close male friend who repeatedly expressed romantic interest in her and kept trying to talk her into cheating on me or leaving me for him. She kept turning him down, but also kept hanging out with him, including one-on-one hangouts. I told her straight up that I wasn't going to tell her who she is or isn't allowed to be friends with, but that it was a deal breaker for me that she kept hanging out with somebody who was actively trying to sabotage our relationship, and had so little respect for not only me but us as a couple. She refused to stop hanging out with him, so I broke it off with her. I 100% believe her, and still do, when she said that she had no intention of ever sleeping with him or being romantically involved, but I refused to be in a relationship with somebody who would tolerate, and by allowing it, endorse, that disrespect of her relationship or partner. I know from mutual friends that even now, 5 or 6 years later, she's still speaking to and hanging out with him, but still refusing his advances and hasn't slept with him. He's honestly just the definition of a spineless simp, and frankly, I think she's used to the ego boost of having somebody pining after her so strongly. Story 18. My wife was always on a high drive and I had a low libido. However, despite me wanting to be intimate with her, she stopped being attracted to me. She got bored of my body after a while. So when we became friends with a man, it didn't take her long to begin flirting with him. I thought it was a good idea to let him in so that we could each get our needs met, and he really liked both of us, calling us the two lights of his life. Pretty soon, it became apparent that she was his favorite, and he was hers. They started to leave me behind, do things without me, leave me out of conversations. He would bring her gifts and not me. One time, he came into the house and had intimacy with her even before saying hi to me. At every step, I expressed my hurt, explaining how left out I felt and how lonely I was. I was brushed off and told that it was my responsibility to force my way in to be included. In August, he told me that he didn't want to be intimate with me anymore. He swore up and down that it wasn't my body, that he just didn't want to have that sort of relationship with me. He promised to help me feel beautiful again, but after just a couple weeks, he began ignoring me for my wife. This whole situation completely broke me, but neither my wife or boyfriend found me attractive. It destroyed my self-esteem. I tried so hard to keep my head up, to work on myself and feel better, but there were times when I'd say a passive-aggressive comment or say something like, "Of course it's going to just be the two of you alone again." And where was my wife in all this when he needed support? Off with him, of course. She even uninvited me for her birthday trip so that she could have intimacy with him. Literally, that was her excuse. It's my birthday, I should get to enjoy it. She didn't want my depression from being ignored to ruin her birthday, so she left me behind, only to come home with stories about how much fun they'd had without me. It took me 2 days to get her to understand how much that hurt me and to agree to make it up to me. This whole time, they would flaunt their life in front of me. They openly talked about how much they wanted to be with a mutual friend, how they wanted to make a Tinder account to find someone, and they'd do it loudly in the other room while I was sitting there, touch-starved and feeling completely invisible. Long story short, I eventually realized that the two of them would never respect me. They'd claimed that they loved me, but their actions said otherwise. My wife already had plans to move in with them before the divorce conversation even happened, so it was a no-brainer that she would move out. I went no contact with them, and my life has been so much better since then. Ever since the garbage took itself out, I've been thriving. I don't miss them in the slightest, and I hope I never see either of them again. Story 19. It was my fault. We were high school sweethearts, and during our whole relationship, we would be open our E&M on and off. It was something we loved doing, and we knew we had a strong enough bond that no one could ever come in between us. After years of being closed, we decided to open it again, but I think the main difference this time around was that we allowed feelings to get involved, deciding that we were polyamorous. Previously, it would just be for fun and just for intimacy. This time, I fell in love with my secondary partner and I saw greener grass with him. I broke my primary partner's heart, and my secondary partner dumped me. I didn't and don't deserve it, but my primary partner took me back and slowly forgave me over time. We've had a lot of discussions about the status of our relationship and how we want to proceed going forward. We decided to stay at E&M or poly because that's genuinely who we are and how we want to live our lives. For the time being. But I know I'll never see greener grass with anyone else because, among other reasons, my partner has been and always will be my absolute best friend, and it will break me to lose him. And I'll never forgive myself for losing sight of that in the first place. Story 20. It was the mother of my ex-fiance. She was a very keeping up with the Jones type of woman who was all about keeping up appearances. She was nice at first, and I knew I had a strained relationship with my own family, so I originally believed she wanted the mother to bond with me. Unfortunately, when she gained my trust, she flipped a switch and started treating me like my own parents did. Basically, she wanted me to make the family look good, so she would demand things of me I wasn't comfortable with, like going back to church because I'm an ex-Christian, but she convinced my ex that I was going to hell and was going to take him with me. She got mad at me because I didn't want to dress to the nines, like full hair and makeup at 6 a.m. just to have lunch at the park, and complained it made her look bad to their work friends because I was grumpy and they thought I was sick. When she felt like she had my trust, she would have heart-to-hearts with me and my ex separately, and then turn around and use that info to turn us against each other. She blessed gym equipment to either turn me into the girl my ex-fiancé deserved or send me on my way. Basically, she felt the need to mother, not just me, but anyone. My ex or her sisters stated we were all just bringing her kids down because they couldn't hold down jobs and basically leeched off mom and dad or their partners. So yeah, I could fill a book with stuff that happened. I'm pretty sure there are some emotional going on because that family was way too open about it. Like his mom telling us about things she's done with his dad. You can't look at edible plant without cringing. Story 21. Technically, this wasn't cheating, as I have no proof. But basically, I had a strained marriage made worse when the in-laws came to live in the apartment under our home. Basically, we had a major disagreement wherein I said they could set their rent the same as it was in their last living situation, but I didn't consider that she also wanted us to pick up all utilities. Eventually, we were playing games online as de-stress, and we met some folks in the game. I worked nights, and she played often with and without me. This is important later. My father-in-law also played with us and disliked how she talked with one guy online. I didn't care, as I'm not insecure. She eventually asks me about a fun trip she's going to be going to during New Year's Eve. I'm working that night, as always, so I just say, sure thing, have fun. Don't let me hold you back, and you don't have to ask me permission. Just let me know you're safe and you're there, as I don't want to be the hubby who holds their woman back. Wifey goes out, she left her watch. The watch buzzed with constant texts, so I figured I'd make a funny joke and spy on her, expecting nothing. Discover texts from the guy and they're romantic in nature. Story 22. The relationship didn't end entirely because of other people. It was bad in general and there were lots of other reasons, but his circle of friends and family played a part in it ending. He's from a touristy small town where the locals don't really like to let the out-of-towners in. They come from a small town as well, and I'm no stranger to this kind of behavior. But this was next level. These people acted like living there was a personality trait because it's a popular vacation destination. I would describe it all as elitist. His friends immediately disapproved of me for that reason alone. I was not from the touristy small town. After I met them, he started treating me entirely differently. He would mock the way I dressed because it wasn't like his other friends. He would make fun of my personality. And on top of that, he would do this in front of his friends, which encouraged it all to continue. Anytime I confronted him on this, he gave some nonchalant answer. That's just the way it is here. One time he actually said to me, nobody liked insert his friend's girlfriend's name here for 2 years and then things changed. It's just how it is. When I ended it, I told him I wasn't interested in being the subject of small-town gossip by people who acted like they were in middle school but were almost 30. Oh, and his family kicked me out of the house when I came down with a 101-degree fever while I was staying with him. I had to travel 3-ish hours back to the city I lived in at the time. Apparently, I wasn't being social enough while I was super sick and trying to be mindful to not spread it to anyone else. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're gonna love this. Catch you in that video.